Police!
It's police brutality, bro. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing.
Hold it there. Don't move. Put your hands behind your back.
With the camera, man.
Behind your back. Hands where I can see them.
Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? It's Phil in Toronto, and yes, it's the Villains episode of the Anti-Gravity Room. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in court of law.
I'm Nick in New York. We've got villains from Joker to Lex Luthor to Doomsday on the docket, and Becky in San Francisco, who isn't exactly a villain, but...
That's right. Well, not anymore anyways. I fought the law and the law won on this episode of Anti-Gravity Room.
Yeah, everybody buys comics for the heroes, but what about the villains? They can do whatever they want, and they don't have to be these do-good crime fighters. I mean, who went to see Batman just for Batman? There's the Riddler, Two-Face, Catwoman, the Joker, and it's the same in comics. Ow, ow, ow. Dude, there's no leg room back here. The bad guys in early comics were common street criminals or Nazis, but readers wanted more challenging foes for the heroes to take on. Thus, in the late 30s and early 40s, characters like Lex Luthor and the Joker sprang up to give Superman and Batman a hard time. Later, Marvel gave us weird villains like Fin Fang Foom and the Vulture, as well as the old ones who became old standbys like Dr. Octopus. Evil versions of heroes are also popular, like Venom, who's actually Spider-Man's old alien symbiote costume. Nowadays, guys like Violator, Doomsday, and Apocalypse represent a new breed of really tough, really powerful supervillains that give the heroes a serious run for the money. Denny O'Neil is a writer and editor on Batman, and he knows more about Bat-villains than anyone else. He had this to say.
Your hero is only as good as your villains. You should work just as hard on the bad guy as the good guy, and if you have to stint somewhere, it's probably better to stint on the good guy because they're going to be rooting for him anyway. With Batman, when I started writing him in the 60s, I inherited a whole lot of villains. I mean, decades of great characters. Two-Face, who's maybe the second best Batman villain, he wears his problem on his face. He is a man divided against himself. Half of him is this very rigidly moralistic district attorney, a guy who believes completely in the law, and half of him is a vicious criminal. He has not reconciled the two halves, so he allows a coin, one side of which is messed up, to make his decisions for him. We can all identify with that in some way, and at the same time, he so directly opposes everything Batman stands for that he's an almost ideal enemy. Catwoman is amoral, or rather, she lives by her own moral code. She decides what's lawful and what's not. One of the things that she's decided is that she loves being a thief. It's the greatest kick in the world for her, and so that's what she does. She is not a vicious character in the way the Joker might be. If she likes you, she'll be very kind to you, and she will not ever willingly hurt anyone. However, if you cross her or if you hurt a friend of hers, she will exact due and terrible revenge on you and not lose a second's sleep over it. Ra's al Ghul is more of an idealist than Batman, but his idealism happens to encompass probably the destruction or death of 90% of the people on the planet to save the planet. Batman feels that nothing is that certain. The planet is not that certainly doomed, and in any case, no conceivable good could outweigh the evil of destroying so many lives. Well, without any doubt, the Joker has been Batman's greatest enemy. Most of the other antagonists the Batman goes against have at least some spark of humanity. There's some little flicker of compassion within them somewhere. Totally untrue of the Joker. He doesn't care about anybody's suffering. He doesn't care about his own suffering. He just doesn't care. And so far as trying to psych out the Joker, he can't do it. Nobody can. We're saying that 2 psychiatrists tried to do that, and both of them are now themselves in mental institutions. A lot of superhero comics in the 40s had villains whose only real crime was trying to find out the superhero's secret identity. Take away the secret identity and these guys wouldn't be doing anything villainous. But nowadays, it's not enough for a villain to be the guy that the good guy doesn't like. He has to be created as real a character as is possible.
The Legion of Supervillains is a classic bunch of bad guys edited by one Casey Carlson at DC Comics. And here he be.
Fatal Five is a collection of probably the most incorrigible characters of their individual planets, the biggest and baddest of their race. They were originally brought together by the Legion of Superheroes when the Legion couldn't face a menace to the entire galaxy that was greater than even their combined powers, called the Sun Eater, a being that was going to engulf the entire sun. It was suggested to the Legion that they draw these 5 characters in from these planets to help them with sheer power, not realizing how evil the characters actually were. The Fatal Five are Validus, a character with massive strength and lightning powers of lightning bolts that come out of his exposed brain. Tharok, who's a mastermind, a criminal genius on the power of Lex Luthor, encased in a half-human, half-robot body. The Executioner with his atomic axe, which can slice through anything. Then we have Mano, who has an incredible death touch. And the final member of the 5 is the Empress, who's probably the most evil and sinister assassin in the known universe. They all have different motivations, and that's part of what makes them interesting and how they work in an interesting group dynamic and things. Some of them are just out for taking over a world because they think it would be cool, but others are interested in scientific expertise and political power, and in the case of Validus, he's just mindless and he just likes to break things. A lot of the more classic villains came about by a single incident. It was something bad that happened to them, and if it would have gone the other way, they could have become on the side of the angels. Coming up in the future, the Legion, we're going to be continuing to investigate bringing back some of the classic Legion villains that people haven't seen for a while. The foremost of which is Mordru, the evil sorcerer. The other major villain would be the Time Trapper. Well, any supervillain dream team has to include Darkseid, no question. In terms of the Legion, any of the Fatal Five characters, either collectively or individually. I know it will probably never happen, but I would love to see the Joker take on the Legion. And I know this kind of thing makes Denny's skin crawl, because when you talk about science fiction and Batman, and the 2 genres don't mix at all, but it's a dream.
The Joker is one of Batman's classic villains, and Mark Hamill does the voice for the animated series. He's a busy guy.
You know, it's almost criminal how much fun I had playing a villain on The Flash. The Trickster. It's the ultimate playground. I had a trickster mobile, I had a flashy costume, I had a sidekick. I was embarrassed to take a paycheck. One thing that's great about villains are their super egos. Joker's probably the all-time villain in comic books. Again, he has this demented genius and a real grudge against Batman, so that helps. Captain Hook and Peter Pan's awfully tempting, because I like the idea of being able to terrorize children and get my comeuppance. It's something very dramatically satisfying about that. I think sometimes the villains are more interesting than the heroes only because there's so many flaws to play, and because they provide the danger to the character that the audiences want to succeed, which is the hero. Having played a hero, Luke, against Darth Vader, you see, it's a thankless role, the hero. I mean, he's always stalwart and serious and no monkey business or fooling around, and the villains can be just terribly self-indulgent and over the top. So probably I'd have to give the nod to villainy, but only in a fictional context.
Ta-ta for now.
This brings us to our anti-gravitational poll, and here's the question. Who do you think is the coolest supervillain? Mr. Copperman?
Hannibal Lecter.
My favorite comic book animated villain is Hexadecimal because she is fierce.
My favorite supervillain would be Catwoman. Anybody with claws and a tail, that's the way to go.
#1 comic book villain, the Joker, the master of all gimmicks, that's why. Remember, the Joker is #1.
Wile E. Coyote, because he is relentless and he's totally ruthless, but he never wins, and so you gotta love him for trying all these years.
After this, Phil reviews some video games, we do an artist profile, and Magneto escapes to wreak havoc once again. Or is he a good guy now? I can never remember.
Now here's Phil with Virtua Cop. He is the law.
Oh, baby, this week we're reviewing Virtua Cop for the Sega Saturn. Now listen to this. It's the perfect translation of the arcade game, but it comes in two forms. The form we got came with the Stunner, right? And you could also buy Virtua Cop as just the CD where you use the controller and you move this crosshair around the screen. Absolutely useless. If you're going to go for this game, you have to get the deluxe edition that comes with the Stunner. Now, when it comes to the game, perfect translation from the arcade, but when you realize that you're not pumping so much money into the thing, it's a lot easier than it was in the arcade. In fact, in about 2 hours, I got through the whole game, which I sort of didn't like. But the thing is, you find yourself playing it again and again and again, over and over and over. It does have different difficulty levels that you can change, you know, easy, medium, hard. You can play around with those. You can play around with the different continues and different other options where you're just shooting targets. Now, I have to tell you, Virtua Cop is a very, very cool game, and I'm giving it 4.5 Gs out of 5. Why do I take off the half G? Because, like I said, it's sort of easy when you're not putting quarters in, and it also doesn't fit into my shoulder holster, the Stunner.
This just in. Computer Cops. This fall, Tom Clancy and Big Entertainment are releasing Net Force. The Federal Bureau of Investigations and Internet collide. The Max is in development at Paramount. Sam Keith, the creator of The Max, has begun the scripting of a live-action version of the MTV cartoon and Image comic. Astro City returns. Kurt Busiek's popular comic is the lead title for Jim Lee's new non-image imprint, Homage Comics. The first issue will appear in August.
My name is Shannon Wheeler. I grew up in Berkeley, California, and I went to college at UC Berkeley, graduated architecture, '89. I started off drawing a comic strip for my college newspaper, the Daily Californian in Berkeley, California, back in '88, and started doing a comic strip for my college paper back then. Moved to Austin, Texas in '92, and started drawing Too Much Coffee Man shortly after. I guess I moved into comic books originally because it was a cheap way to do film. People always ask me, am I making my living from doing comics? And I guess I am. But yeah, it's basically turned into my livelihood and pretty much my life. It's a lot of work.
No food, no water. What comics would you like on a desert island?
The 3 comics I'd have with me on a desert island are The Watchmen, The Dark Knight, and Detective 27, because when I get off, I'm going to need some cash.
After this, Nick reviews some comics and gets a dose of gamma radiation. Hey, the madder Nick gets, the stronger Nick gets. Hey, fellow comic lovers, I am Nick in the anti-gravity room with Comicopia, my weekly 24th of an hour to give the latest comics the 3rd degree. First up, we have A Sharp Woman Drawn in Ink. And no, we're not talking about Demi Moore. This is Dart, a new series that follows the adventures of a character who debuted in the pages of Savage Dragon. Dart is a striking woman who fights crime with the aid of really sharp darts. Ouch! This tale shows you more of Dart's troubled childhood and has a cool cameo by Killcat, who helps Dart stop a mugging and then tries to get her phone number. Those superhero chicks never have the time. Take it from me. This book breathes new life into Image Comics, and I gave it 3.8 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, the story of an emerald torch that... No, wait a minute. This is Green Lantern, number 73. This issue continues the Hero Quest storyline, as Wonder Woman and Green Lantern duke it out. Or do they? The story begins with the two godlike humans beating each other pretty hard, but as it turns out, it's all staged. The fight was just part of Hero Quest, which is Green Lantern's mission to seek out other heroes and get advice in order to make himself a better hero. Green Lantern is a fun book. It's kind of cool to see what it's like for someone just getting into the superhero business. And I give it 3.5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, oh my, Mars is attacking! Run for your lives! As it turns out, our green, big-headed, human-abducting friends have known about the human race for a while. There are two kinds of aliens. One, the Naros, who want to conquer the Earth. The other, the Pages, who want to bond with humans. The aliens arrive peacefully on Earth, only to be killed by humans as fast as they come. Anyway, to sum things up, the war has begun and we're fragged. This book has won high acclaim in the world of comics. The aliens may be our worst enemies yet. I give this comic 4 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Farewell, good night. Last one out, turn out the light.
So lots of supervillains have been around for ages. How did the new guys on the block compete? We went to Extreme Studios to find out.
Hi, my name is Matt Hawkins. I'm the editor here at Maximum Press. We all have our dark sides, and sometimes I think we like to visit them. This is Belial. He's a demon lord, kind of covering the area of New York. He's enormously powerful. He's got enormous, superhuman strength. He's the foil for Avengeling, and he has the ability to transform back and forth into a human appearance and a demonic appearance.
Yeah, I think villains have to be crazy because it makes them more unpredictable. And I think that's the fun thing about villains is their unpredictability and that they'll do things heroes won't do. And I think that's why people like them. This is Boltar from our Battlestar Galactica comic. And he's the ultimate Judas. He's betrayed mankind, so he's a great villain. And what we've done is updated him and given him Cylon technology. His arms are cybernetic now.
What we're trying to do is come up with villains that have this long-lasting life with a strong visual image recognition, like in the Seven Deadly Sins in the Avengeling title, we have Wrath, who is this strong, very mean-looking guy. Obviously, he's very physically strong. He's a brute. You have Pride, who is kind of Gastonish-looking, very beautiful, but at the same time kind of villainous with the cleavers and the nails and things like that. You have Gluttony, who looks like this fat, kind of slobbish-looking guy, kind of a gray skin tone. And you have Lust, who's this beautiful woman who seduces people. And you have Greed and Envy, and I think the best visual one of all is Sloth. He's so lazy, he actually recalls the undead, pulls the undead out of the grave here just to do his bidding because he's too lazy to do it himself. But these characters, sin is inherently fun. It has its consequences, and it eventually will come and haunt you. But I think every one of us wants to visit this dark side of ourselves, and this allows you through these books to actually go in and it's escapism form of entertainment and see and visit and see what the dark side would do. I think a villain has to be really much larger than life, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that from us.
Of course, of the big villains, there is none bigger than Doomsday, who will always be known as the villain who took down Superman. We talked to the multi-talented Dan Jurgens, artist and writer of this rocky villain, who is actually a pretty big softie once you get to know him.
Since 1982, I've been working for DC Comics, where I've done a lot of different things. Warlord, Zero Hour, a little bit of Batman work, a Flash Gordon, a Booster Gold series, and Justice League. But the thing I'm probably best known for is the death of Superman, which was back in 1992. That was the big fight between Superman and the villain known as Doomsday, who actually killed Superman. We thought, just sitting in a room, that it might be real interesting to tell a story about the death of Superman and then everything that would happen after he died. So we planned to do all these sad Superman stories where they would have a funeral for Superman, and his own parents couldn't even come because the world didn't know that Clark Kent was really Superman. And that's what got us interested, was really writing and drawing stories about a world without Superman. When we decided to kill Superman, we knew that we had to have someone very special do it. And at that time, I had also been working on a character who was just the embodiment of sheer, brute, physical force. We didn't even have a name for him yet. That came later. But eventually, he became a character called Doomsday. And from the start, he was probably our most unique villain in visual terms, and maybe our most unique just because he didn't even talk. He was just rage incarnate. And that was totally different for a Superman comic at the time. So I'm often asked, will we ever see Doomsday again? I don't like to tell secrets out of school, and we don't know for sure, but if I had to bet, I'd definitely bet that he's coming back.
After this, we root through the mailbag and pull out a human head.
It's time for that old mailbag. Morgan Wessler writes to say, the best supervillain would have to be Norman Osborn as the first Green Goblin, but since he's worm food, I'd have to put a tie between Deadpool and Sabretooth. Cool.
And D. Casey on AOL writes, I heard about a Wildstorm card game. Is it ever going to come out? The answer is, yep, it's out, and it's pretty good. We give it a 3.5 Gs out of 5. He also writes,
Phil should seriously think about cutting his hair.
Oh.
This week's question is, what is Soylent Green made out of?
Well, that's it. It seems those bad guys and girls are just as much a part of comics as the heroes.
Of course, none of them are as nasty as the prime source of all evil on this planet.
David Hasselhoff, the ultimate villain. Run for your lives!
Hello, I'm Richard Hart. This week on CNET Central, see the technology of tomorrow today. CNET Central brings you the future as it unfolds. That's CNET Central. Today at 10:30 a.m. Sci-Fi Sunday.
A lone star pilot ventures into the farthest reaches of outer space, unaware of the demon that awaits him, a creature that will possess his body and change him forever. Transformation.